welcome back to another edition of the North Port Newsbreak. I'm Jason Bartolone. Today we are joined by Joe Mansuetti. Joe is an environmental specialist. He works with the Natural Resources Division here at the City of North Port. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we're going to talk a little bit about our wildlife here in North Port. It's a topic of concern when we talk about the environment all the time with our residents, and Joe and his team are working on our wildlife corridors and ways to protect and preserve our environment and all the creatures that call North Port home. First, if you can start off with, what are wildlife corridors and why are they important?
Okay, yeah, so wildlife corridors are like a linear strip of forest. A lot of people think of it large forested areas, connecting green spaces. Also, they could be just tree-lined streets, hedgerows, but mostly linear habitat. So a lot of times in the urban environment or even agriculture, you have a lot of habitat that's fragmented or displaced. So an area you need to do is kind of connect those areas because a lot of species can't survive more in a smaller habitat, and the ranges are larger, so they need more connectivity. Also, genetic diversity and just a lot of different species richness and evenness. So a lot of times in these smaller areas, they get less species and lower numbers of those species. So this corridors help kind of make that range larger again instead of just these small little areas. So it helps improve the genetic diversity. It helps improve species richness. So how many species are in an area instead of like monocultures or for plants, or actually just like a few bird species. So if you have corridors, you hopefully see more bird species, more plant species. I think there's a study that said there's about 68% more species in an area that's connected by corridors than not. So
okay.
It really does help out.
Yeah, so it sounds really important for our wildlife that call North Port home. What are the considerations that you take into account when you're planning for these corridors, and how do you actually figure out where they go and how to put them together?
Yeah, so a lot of times you kind of get a target species, call them umbrella species, something that your target goal to get movement, and that will kind of also hopefully encompass a lot of other species underneath that. So if you're looking for bird species or say it's scrub jay, we have scrub jays, looking for that habitat. So what habitats do we have? Are we connecting it to habitats that are also suitable? So you kind of want to look for the correct kind of habitat. Also, just what are you connecting with? So it's going to be kind of similar habitat. Can you do that? Look at the future land use. We have future land use holds in certain areas. Mm-hmm. So kind of what do we have now? Is that habitat going to be converted or developed, or is there areas that we could conserve in that area that we know is future land use that we can keep as conservation area? So because what you don't want to do is kind of create a corridor that's going to be removed later down the road. Another thing is just we have drainage systems, and a lot of those areas can be used as corridors for other species. So kind of just seeing what's available and seeing what we can kind of keep, and we know that's going to kind of stay around for a long time, and actually where the areas you can connect. So do they go somewhere, or is it just a bridge to nowhere, or
right.
Is it actually going to hit a community, different habitat?
We have a large diversity of species and wildlife here in North Port, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So that diversity is probably really important, keeping those areas available to them. So we hear this a lot from our residents, right? That the creatures were here before us, right? But we have to share it. We have to share the land. Yeah. We have to work together. We all live here, and we have to go about our daily lives. But how do you balance the need between the wildlife that calls North Port home and the people that call home in this urban and suburban environment that we have?
Yeah, well, I think it kind of benefits both if you really think about it. So now you're creating these corridors, so you're helping benefit the wildlife, and that also kind of helps the wildlife-human conflict. Sometimes there's animals you just want them around, but you don't want to have to run into them necessarily. Right. So that helps out with that kind of thing. And really it's kind of creating an aesthetics. So not a lot of people want just cleared land, and so you have this, forested corridors. There also could be used as parks and trails. The Macahachie Greenway is a perfect example. Like that's a corridor. That's a linear habitat along the Macahachie Creek. We also have trails. We also have bikes. So I think it benefits both all the time, and that's when you're finding these areas as a drainage canals. Those aren't going anywhere, so they're not. Humans aren't using that. So people that abut it now, they have a little buffer zones, kind of privacy between the houses across the canal, and it just provides benefit for both people and humans. So I think, in a way, it kind of provides benefit for both. There's not many, give or takes. So it's more of a everybody benefits.
So we can coexist, is what I'm hearing.
Yes,
there are ways that we can live
think
together.
I think so, and that's one of the ways you kind of plan it too. And you want to get when you're looking for areas, you kind of put that human use into perspective too, so you can kind of figure out both. You don't have any conflict. So
Right. So how do you tell how we're doing? How do we monitor it? How do we evaluate if these are effective and how we're doing as a community with our wildlife corridors?
yeah, so I think the most ideal is, some of these corridors are already existing naturally, or just can't develop along the Macahachie Creek also. But we're going to put some corridor programs in place. You kind of want to do a baseline monitoring. So go to the green spaces, look at those areas, document like what kind of species are there already, and even through the corridor. And then as you progress and implement it, then you continue an annual monitoring for the most part. So you'll see what's there, what's new. So say you connected 2 green spaces and you had some species of plant or animal in one, and now you're starting to see in the other. That's what you're going to kind of see movement and look for activity throughout the corridor also. So just more of a monitoring program, seeing how everything progresses. Another thing you can do when you have kind of bottleneck areas where they're crossing maybe under a bridge or in a narrowed area, for larger mammals or animals, you could do camera traps and just see.
I've seen those, yeah.
You can monitor. They have those all through Florida for different areas, like Florida panthers. They have it. Do they see panthers using this one corridor or something? So yeah, there's a bunch of different ways, and you quantify it that way, and just more kind of set up your study plan as you develop the whole corridor.
And then I guess you can adapt based on that data that you're getting as you see our environment changing. You're seeing more or less of a species, right? How do you adapt to that?
Yeah, so pretty much kind of looking at that and seeing why. So I can use in urban environment. There's a lot of bird species, songbirds. Well, they need their refuge, and so if you don't manage the habitat correctly, you could have an increase of predatory birds. So are you kind of giving the predators good areas for ambush points? And even in corridors, a lot there's predatory issues with. They kind of learn. Okay, if they're going to go through, these animals are going to go through here, so we'll sit here and just wait and just kind of get them as they go. So you kind of want to look for any kind of ambush points for predators. Just even kind of looking at what you're seeing in the decrease and kind of study their natural history and see why that could be. So you just kind of tweak and manage, and hopefully, ideally, you manage the habitat as natural as possible you can in an urban environment, and you could prevent a lot of that stuff.
So we have a lot of passionate residents who really care about the environment. I know you guys at Natural Resources did a listening tour, and we had a great response from people as you've gotten your division underway. People that really care and want to know how they can help. What can they do? It's not just all on the city. It's not just all on experts. It's on everyday people who live here. So how can they help to maintain those wildlife corridors? How can they help in this effort?
Yeah, I think a lot depends on even where you live or where you're at. So if you're living along these drainage canals or just anywhere in the city, when you want to plant native, kind of we're working on our tree canopy. So you plant native trees, and that really helps because, like I said, that can help birds travel. Even if it's not a linear habitat, that helps certain animals. And then even not only birds, but pollinators. So butterflies, other insects too, which seems so minute, but they're actually kind of helping a lot with spread of vegetation and increases habitat and diversity. And you're along these drainage canals or even the wild areas, create a wildlife buffer yourself, to have additional wooded area in your backyard. Another thing is pets, indoor cats.
Yes.
It's not necessarily just for corridors, but in general for wildlife. Yeah, cats outside or dogs off leashes that could prove to have a lot of impact on wildlife. Not maybe just as in direct mortality, but just kind of predator presence they would see. So that kind of would prevent other animals from coming nearby. Another thing is we always have an invasive plant species problem, and that kind of degrades habitat a little bit. So
the Brazilian peppers,
Brazilian pepper
right?
and all that fun stuff, Kogan grass. I see that throughout everywhere all the time, which is easier said than done to get rid of. But yeah, just to kind of like the upkeep of the outside of your house. So there's a lot of stuff you can do. Well, people try to feed outdoor animals and that sort of thing. Sometimes that could just kind of incentivize the wrong type of animals to come by, and that could cause a lot of conflict for different species. So when you're feeding, I think there was a bear sighting a week or two
There
ago.
was,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
So, you can live with the bears and kind of, if you want to live with them, make sure you don't have food out, or, get your garbage cans kind of secured so
Right.
it doesn't cause further issues, and then the bears are gone.
No
You have
free
to-
lunches for the bears.
Yeah,
Got
yeah,
it.
yeah. It does more harm than good for the bear, and so even though it's fun to see the bears around, kind of.
Right. Yeah. I'm fine looking at the pictures. But.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, is there anything else that you want to add or share about this topic or just what you guys do in natural resources?
Yeah, like I said, we're just hitting the ground running. It's just all started in December, so looking through a lot of different areas and just just manage and see what we have going on. Even so, it's been a fun 6 months so far, but yeah, I mean, with the Magahatchee Greenway already in place, that's really promising, and we have this drainage system, so it's kind of cool to see all the stuff we have in North Port right now and start connecting dots. So we're working with other people, public and internally, with Parks and Rec to help create some better green spaces too. So it's about all we have with corridors, but I'm definitely excited about it.
I know you have a lot of exciting projects.
Yeah.
How can people find more out about your team, what you guys do? How can they get in touch with you? I guess the website is probably a good resource.
Yeah, the website, natural resources. We have a bunch of information. We get a lot of calls about our trees, gopher tortoises, scrub jays. We all have links to all those. And we have I think it's natural resources at northportfl.gov is our contact, and any questions we are. I think we're pretty good at being responsive. So usually it's a day at most, but we usually get back to you right away. So and we're learning all kind of things about Northport and like I said, hitting the ground running. So any questions, we'll definitely be happy to answer and work with people on helping with any kind of wildlife they have.
That's great. I know you guys have been out in the community, getting to know everybody, getting the word out about what you're working on, and hearing from people. It's been great to hear the response. So
Yeah, definitely.
And thank you for doing something like this, Joe. I appreciate you being here with us.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
And again, you can find more information, northportfl.gov. Look for Natural Resources, their page. They have lots of information, ways you can get in touch with them, and ways you can learn more about all the exciting things we have going on as it pertains to the environment and what this team is working on. So again, thank you, Joe, and thank you all for listening to another edition of the North Port Newsbreak. We'll be back again soon.